G'day there, Cygnets and Swanlings. 2012 Premiership player Nick Smith here. It's my pleasure, as always, to introduce a bevy of bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club, brought to you by Noddy and Stevo, a pair of red and white tragics. So pop on the kettle and settle in as the boys had an in-depth chat about the Swans' last game, the Swans' next game, and a little bit about footy too. This is Nick Smith signing off until next week's episode. But in the meantime, remember, be good to your bloods and they'll be good to you.
Welcome back to a bevy of bloods. My name is Noddy and I'm joined as always by Chris. How you going, mate?
Mate, nervous and excited. Can't sleep. How you doing?
Exactly the same. It's very late / very early, and here we are doing this episode number 96. There we go. Number 56, in which we'll be previewing the bloody grand final against the Cats this coming Saturday. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially, definitely, most definitely biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. This Saturday afternoon, our Sydney Swans will play the Geelong Cats at the MCG for the 2022 AFL Premiership, with first bounce at 2:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It still kind of feels surreal, doesn't it?
It's not. It doesn't feel right. Like, I know I'm jumping on a plane in like 48 hours, but it doesn't feel right. I don't feel that yet. It's unbelievable. It's really struggling to put this in my mind, and I'm losing sleep over a good thing. It's weird.
Well, let me set the scene. Let's recap. Let's go back to how these two teams have made it as far as they have. So let's look at Geelong. They were minor premiers, finishing in first place with 18 wins, 4 losses, and a huge percent on 144.2. They have the third best offense after the home and away season, after Richmond and Brisbane, the third best defense after Fremantle and Melbourne. If you break down their wins and losses, they had 7 wins against top 8 teams: Collingwood, Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, Richmond, Melbourne, Carlton, and the Dogs again, and 3 losses against other top 8 teams: the Swannies by 30 and Buddies 1000th magical night, Fremantle by 3, and St Kilda by 10. So apart from us, two close losses would have beaten all the other top 8 teams. In terms of bottom 10, they had 11 wins. I'm not going to go through it, but basically they had 2 wins against the Roos, who came last, and 2 wins against the Eagles, who came second last. And they had 1 loss against Hawthorn, and that was by 12. So there's a bit of a story coming out here. Basically, by the end of the home and away season, their average against was about 67, 68 points a game, and their average for was about 97, almost 98 points a game. So defensively, very good, as we've said, third. Offensively, very good, third. We come ahead to the final series. They've had a pretty good run like us, 2 games at the MCG. They've beaten Collingwood, as we know, by 6, and then absolutely wiped the floor of the Lions. Did they even turn up that night? Who knows? By 71. So just looking at these 2 games, their averages for the finals are very similar to their home and away. So they've got 60 to 61 points against and 99 points for, obviously helped by that huge 71-point thrashing. If we look at their average winning margin, they're 39.61 points for the home and away season, and the average losing margin is 13.75 for the home and away. Skip ahead to the finals, and it's a pretty close figure. Obviously, they haven't lost yet, but their average winning margin is 38.5. They're on a 15-game win streak. There's 6 wins from 6 games at the MCG in 2022. They've qualified for their 6th grand final since 2007.
Wow.
They've had a pretty big season.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, those numbers, mate. So what we're seeing there is that they are insanely consistent, and they've been the team to beat since more or less the first couple of rounds in this year. So, and luckily we got 1 over them, but. Yeah, all those numbers and everything you say there, wow, they are dominant this year.
Yep, big time. And look, obviously this is preaching to the choir, to the listeners of the podcast, but for the sake of good order, I'm going to do the same for the Swannies so we can have a like-for-like comparison. We finished third, as we know, 16 wins, 6 losses, 127.9%, fourth best offense, fourth best defense, behind Richmond, Brisbane and Geelong, behind Fremantle, Melbourne and Geelong, respectively. Our top 8 wins, we had 6. They were against Geelong, Bulldogs, Richmond, Fremantle, Bulldogs again, and then Collingwood. We had 2 losses, one against the Bulldogs, that early one, and then that shocking loss against Brisbane. Against the bottom 10 teams, we had 10 wins. We played North Melbourne twice, but only the Eagles once. And then we had 4 losses, the Suns, Carlton, Port, and Essendon. In terms of those averages that I spoke about for the Cats, the home and away against averages, we were 73 to 74 against, and we were 94.4. So I'll just refresh the memory. For the Cats, it was 68 against and 97.98 for. So probably, yeah, they're a bit better there, aren't they? So. And then we skip ahead to our finals campaign. So we obviously had that rousing win against the D's at the MCG by 22 points. And then that massive win, which we just reviewed moments ago in the podcast against the Pies by 1 point at the SCG. How wonderful. So our final series averages for 4, we've got 81.5, 82 points against and 93 points for. We've got an average winning margin, the home and away, of 39 points, 39.19, and an average losing margin of 16. So that's pretty close to the Cats. I just want to call that out. So the Cats had about 40-point average winning margin. Ours was 35. And they had a 14-point average losing margin, and we were 16. So not far off. Skipping ahead to the finals, we haven't lost any. So our average winning margin in the finals has been 11.5 points because of that close win. Obviously, we are also on a 9-game win streak. We're 2 wins from 3 games at the MCG in 2022. And they were Melbourne during the season. We won by 12. Essendon, nope. That was the one we lost. That was that frustrating 9-point loss to the Dons where they couldn't kick it behind. I think they were like 12-5 or something, and we had way too many behinds. And then, of course, the third game and the second win of the year for us was the qualifying final against the D's again at the MCG. It is, of course, our 4th grand final since 2012. 2012, 14, 16, and this year. So that's the recap.
That's
a lot of numbers, but let's get back into the juicy stuff. I know you've got some real feel-good stuff here, mate. So let's get into storylines.
Yeah, so what we want to do is enjoy the journey that we've got here. We've got some fantastic storylines that are driven by all the players and the coaches. So let's just start off with the big man himself, Buddy. Look, so much has been written about Buddy, and you just have to imagine that this year is redemption, regardless of what happens at the grand final for this year, because one man can't entirely turn it. For themselves. It takes a team effort. But for this year, final last year of his contract, signs on for another year. We just found out today. They said he would never finish that contract. He wouldn't be healthy enough. Well, not only is he healthy, he's still insanely good. He's still super healthy. He just kicked 50 goals for the best of the Swans. And he's doing everything he needs to do. He's in great health. And, of course, kicks his 1,000th goal against the team that he then goes on to play the grand final of in that same year.
Spooky. Now, how do you feel about that?
Like the storyline there has just got bullets are written all over it. It's
hard to, because we're going to go through, we're going to look at our previous encounters. That's the last time we played them. It's sort of hard to get a read on it because it was such a magical, also energy. Surreal night. Yeah. So, we beat him by 30 or whatever it was. Anyway, we'll go through that later. I'm stoked. Buddy's hanging around. Also going back in time, they think he was just going to just fall apart. I know he had a few issues at the time, but yeah, I mean, they were so cutthroat about it, weren't they? They were like, even if he has to retire, you've got to pay him for the full thing. And then there was the fallout with the the trade ban and then the cola, and geez, they hated us, didn't they?
They really went. We were
just following the rules.
We were just like, the rules are cool. Let's play with them. It's like, how dare you? It's like, Buddy's changed the game entirely in a few different ways, but now he's the best modern forward of all time, undisputed. And yeah, just writes a new storyline every time he steps onto the pitch, that he is built that way. It's just fantastic, mate. Just unbelievable.
One more year.
One more year.
Look,
another storyline, Millsy and Heaney, our two academy boys. This year, both all Australians. Look, from the very beginning, we knew they were special. And as they've come into prime age, they are now icons of the competition and are leading us into a grand final that they are a massive part of. What a fantastic story. Academy boys to all Australians, babies to full-grown men. Great to see. Love to see that.
It sort of freaks me out to think that they could be like the halfback and 5/8 for the New South Wales Blues or the New South Wales Waratahs. Isn't that a weird
That is a weird
thought?
feeling. Yeah, that's right.
I just can't see them in anything other than red and white.
Mate, but, look, next one, McCartan brothers.
Oh,
what else? What do we say about this? Like, the story is it just blows my heart. Tommy playing as a forward, a good forward, but not an elite forward. Just one day, Horse is like, oh yeah, go have a crack at the back then. I don't know how it happened, but however it happened, started immediately making an impact, showing his true colors. Like, wow, this guy is elite already. And then his brother, Paddy, first draft pick, playing for St Kilda, going off there, gets concussed a few times, has to step out away from the game, get himself organised. Tommy's in the back line here in the Swans, and my brother's still looking for a job. So they roll him on
Something the McLaughlins know well about, just sort of helping their bros to get a role in the industry. This is one we condone.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
We're all for this one.
Nepotism all the way. It comes on in, diabetes, mental health, concussion, does everything he possibly can to get through, starts playing for the Swans from round one of this year and never stepped back. He was immediately impactful. Everyone was convinced Grundy had made a comeback. As it turned out, it wasn't him. It was
his
just
doppelganger.
It's a doppelganger of bloody Grundy. And now we have the two brothers that clearly love each other to death.
Oh my goodness.
In that back line, playing in a grand final together, and their first grand final together.
When they embrace on the field, it does things to my heart like that those bloody Google ads do. Those. Have you seen the Google ads? Last season it was the African father and daughter, and he's doing the barbecue, and it's like, what is a specky or something? And then this one is the Alzheimer's one with the Geelong. Oh my god! Every time I watch that, I cry. It's
the
crazy.
Alzheimer's grandmother, and it's just like this.
Oh my god! That is what I get when I watch the McCartan brothers when they embrace on the field.
It's just seeing them talk about each other. I'm just like, oh god! I call my brother up immediately.
I had so many discussions online with Swans fans, it was such a and they were like, oh no, don't bring him in, but it was such a win-win, prospect for the Swans. If it worked out, we've got an ex number one pick, regardless of where you put him, right? But he was playing in the VFL down back, so they were grooming him for that. He comes in, slots in perfectly, and he's kept out effectively another AFL level key defender in Melican, who you feel for, who I actually saw at the end of the game after the Pies game, and I called out to him. I said, "There's still got love for you, mate. We love you, Melly. Hang around if you can, because surely he's going to be thinking about his future as well. Yeah,
Paddy's just going, and that's right. Remember, he got knocked about a couple of times. He got concussed, not concussed, but concussion syndrome came in, and they had to sit him out
down in the rooms.
And all of us were just panicked. We're like, oh no, like this can't happen now. Not that he's just like finding himself in the game again, and now this is going to be taken away from him. I remember the time he was in absolute hysterics at the time.
Yeah,
he was really upset, and we all were upset. Yeah. But he's now at a grand final with his brother, mate. Yeah, what can you say?
That's probably the AFL story of the year.
It should be.
Let's get a couple of these things going, because these are the kinds of things that give you momentum and get you over the line. So
That's it.
we got heaps more, mate. Sammy Reid.
Written off by everyone except the die-hard fans of his. He came in, showed us what he could do when his body held up. And not only that, he was dominant while he did it. And it was only halfway through this season when we started realizing that, wow, Sammy is here to play. And he is now, unfortunately, done a soft tissue injury, and we're still waiting to hear whether he's going to play or not. And we may not find out until the morning of the game or on the game itself, whether he plays or not. That storyline is a heart jerker, and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what to do about my emotions there.
I know,
but
it's
just
like a Benny McGlynn all over again.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, all right, mate. Next one. Tom Hickey.
Tall Jesus.
Tall Jesus, Rock Jesus, whichever way you want to go down it. The most iconic characters since Rampy put on a robe, right, at the Swans. He's loved by the fans. He's a loving person by nature.
Just a genuinely good bloke.
Just a genuinely lovely guy. And you could just see that people love him and he loves them back. He's just a fantastic clubman amongst everything else. 4th team over 4 different states. He's going to his GF being the lead ruckman for a dominant team in a dominant centers. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he had an amazing year last year. It was probably, probably arguably one of the, it was top 3 ruck in the comp. He's a little bit off that this year. Well, in the first half of the year, he hasn't kicked as many goals, but his efforts, I think, just in the last 6 weeks have been, one of the main reasons that we've been getting ahead. He's back to his clearance dominance, his two-way running, his assistance in defence, just unreal. Yep. Just unreal. We're really what an acquisition. I've been on record before saying I was pessimistic about it. I wasn't sure it would work, and obviously, proven completely wrong. Happy to admit that. And just he really is one of the backbones of this team. So
yep. more than that, like a foundation, I would say a foundation. Look, Warner Rowbottom. The new insiders, we'll looked into this season with a couple of young kids. We saw what they had available to them last year, maybe less so Rowie. That's only popped in this year, but we saw what Warner could do. But those 2 players have played entirely different styles of football, yet gone on to just be this new look outfit. And from a team that prides itself on quality on the inside, these are the ones we've got, and the unique skills that they have work in perfect unison to each other. We've been blessed by those 2, and they are taking the AFL world by storm week in, week out. It's amazing.
Definitely, and this was the area that we had some question marks over. Obviously at the start of the season we had Joey, probably in his last year, and that's turned out that way. Parks had signed on for another 4, but he'll be 33 when he finishes, and Dawson left. And we lost Hewitt, so we were craving these midfielders, and we'd seen a little bit from both of these guys, but not enough to go. Are we going to be competitive this year? And look what they've done. Like Warner's Damien Barrett saying this guy's going to win a Brownlow as soon as next year. He's doing Dusty stuff, he's doing Degoe stuff, and Rowie, I think probably more than Chad in the last 4 weeks or so. Rowie has just been so good. His clearance work, his defense work, averaging almost 10 tackles a game. The guy is bonkers, right? Beast. In defense, he's just running. And so I'm with you, mate. These guys have stepped up big time ahead of their years, and it's just really pleasing.
And it's propelled us forward, those 2, I think. A big part of it.
Yep.
Look, Ryan Clark from North Melbourne Kangaroos, just random player, kind of dropped off the team. We got through a trade, Noddy, I think, from memory.
Yeah, I think he was a 2nd round draft pick. I remember Beatson saying that he actually had a look at him for our pick that year, but they North beat us to him. So and then when the chance to take him on came up, he snapped. And he obviously toiled away there in the VFL for a while. He's had a few games up in the AFL, but he was in and out, wasn't he? He was in and out, and just
Couldn't
seemed like
keep a spot.
Yeah, he just couldn't keep his spot. Seemed like it was a little bit. You can never question his running ability. He would run all day, but it was some of his decision making, some of his strength in contest that you think maybe he wasn't quite there. He's still young, right? He's what, 24, 25 maybe?
He's a baby.
Right.
And he feels like such a veteran at this point, just from between bouncing in and out of a couple of different teams, bouncing through the system. Just couldn't get himself a game, but now he's recognized as probably one of the best positional taggers going around.
Yeah, 25.
Everyone knows his name. Everyone knows his name now.
Yeah, I mean, you want to call him the Clarksman, you want to call him Clamps, whatever you want to call him. And he's one. I think he's good mates with the like that core group, and so it's good to see mates playing well together, having fun, and so that actually helps with team harmony and cohesion. So it's positive, and we've spoken about every week for the past since he's come in and really solidified his spot, the jobs that he's done on the upper echelon of halfbacks. Oh, sorry, that type of distributor role coming off the halfback from bottom 10 teams and top 8 teams, but he's done a job on all of them.
Right.
He did Nick Dacos in the prelims, so
twice now.
High five. Yep.
Look, the next storyline: Gordon, Logan, McInerney, Blakey, unbelievable talents in all of these little key areas, who are lovely kids signing on for long contracts, all saying the best things about everything, saying that they love the team, they love the culture, they love everything that's happening at the game. And each one of them is dangerous as hell. They are babies. They are going to the big stage for the first time in their young careers, and we are blessed to see it. And there's a bunch more we could rattle off, but they're not playing this week. But they are a big part of the core of under 22s of just why we're going to.
I'll add Stevens to that.
You're right,
because he's in the mix
sure.
there, and he's been playing unreal in the past 6 weeks as well. Pretty much since he and Clark and Fox came in, just those three guys have just been super role players, and big reason to why we've done so well in the run home.
Unbelievable. Look, mate, what do you say about the team just generally, our journey from where we've been from last year as well, throughout this entire season to where we are now, into a grand final against the most dominant team of the year and the Cats? Like we've been really blessed just to have this team, this unit, and just slowly form themselves into a whole cohesive unit over the season. We've watched it happen. We've documented it. It's been just a journey, and I just want to sit back for a moment and just enjoy it, to be honest with you. Just really enjoy where we've gotten to right now. I understand there's one more game to play, one more game to win, but for where we stand, just fascinated by what's going on. We're super happy.
Definitely, mate. It is, what do you say? I'm just, it's a nerve-wracking week, isn't it? Because we're the high of the Pies game, and now it's all ahead of us. So it's
so much.
One more week, but you got to be in it to win it, and here we are. So we've got a couple of comments here about how both teams have run over the past decade. Why don't we pick up on that in the next couple of sections? We'll just remember to come back to some of these, but before that, mate, why don't we touch on strengths and weaknesses? So we're going to have a bit of a general rolling chat about the game style of both teams, some players, what they're good at, what they're not good at. So let's kick off with Geelong. When you think of Geelong in 2022, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I just think of absolutely dominant forwards.
Yeah. Yep.
Just cleaning people up, like Tom Hawkins, AA captain.
Question mark.
Questionable
rather. It was factually correct, but I mean, I guess it was like giving Buddy captain of the AA when they did.
When that happened, yeah. Look, Cameron, again, all Australian, right? Stengel, all Australian. Three powerhouse units at the front. Two of these absolute veterans, and the best in their craft in most years, and they're just being able to team together up with this discount that somehow Geelong gets. I don't know where their collar is. I don't know how this works itself out.
Do you want me to get my tinfoil hat back out, mate?
Get it. Go get it.
No. I'm just going to say, I just think there's like a lot of post-career opportunities in the Geelong region. And whether that's down at the surf shack, down on the coast, or inland on the farm,
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of
In and
post-career
around dairy
opportunities.
farms, yeah.
No, good on them though. Good on them. They look after
Mate.
they look after their own.
They do, and they managed to get all these players. And so you look at what do you think of when you think of Geelong? Not only those dominant forwards, you also think fantastic backs, incredible mids. Selwood, Guthrie, Patrick Dangerfield, wow, Isaac Smith, they are beaming with talent everywhere.
They are. They've got a lot of experience, and the players. Some of the players you just listed out, they fit into this 10 over 30. So they've almost half of their team. Almost half, right? So we're looking at Blitzarves, Dangerfield, Guthrie, Hawkins, Rowan, Selwood, Smith. That's Isaac Smith, Stanley, Tui, and then two players who were 29, Stewart and Cameron. So, they've just got so much experience, and these are the guys that are. I mean, they're not even the guys that are pushing them forward. They're just rounding it out. I want to think that their balance is wrong, and that they're too experience heavy, but it's clearly working for them. For all we went through the recap. We've touched on their success over the journey. But if we go to game style, so you think of forward dominance.
Yeah, I think of forward dominance, and I mostly think of just quality all around the ground. I'd look at your Tom Stewart, AA. You look at Blitzarves, AA. You look at Jeremy Cameron, Stengel, and Hawkins, AAs, all amongst those three. You see, and then you throw in an extra few names amongst the mix here. I just mentioned them a second ago. Duncan, Guthrie, Patrick Dangerfield, Reece Stanley, Zach Tui, Sam De Koning. Every name that I'm naming out are one of the best in what they do in their position, and they just have quality across everything. It's really hard for us to kind of work out where a weak spot is in this team. They just that way put together.
Yeah, and look, it's hard to sort of know, because I mean they weren't they obviously blew the comp away, and they won by whatever it was, two games ahead, and a huge percentage. But they did have a few of those extra games against the lower ranked teams, but it didn't really matter because that was they were pretty consistent. They knew how to put teams away. They knew how to, if they were going to lose, they were going to lose close. And I just keep putting it back to that core of experience, and it's all clicking. There's two ways it can go with an older core, is that you have injuries, so then you've got to fill that with up and comers, or you can stick together, have a good run with lack of run with injuries, and it all gels. And I think that's what seems to be happening. So maybe we can blend some of their past glories into this section that we're talking about right now, mate. So I think you had a couple of those points there about there being the best club. So what have we got there?
Yeah, look, you would say that. Look, I've seen it around. Look, I personally believe it, but I've also seen a bunch of people writing it as well. With Geelong and the Swans as two of the best clubs in terms of just consistency, not only just what they do on the field in terms of premierships and finals berths and going deep into September, but also just the way that the club is run, their ability to support their players, their support of the fans, and the quality of the output you get from them. And we haven't matched each other in a grand final. How long? I don't even know when.
I saw something
ever.
About 136 years. Something may have happened a long time ago.
So let's just say never, right?
Yeah.
If it's not in the last, let's just use the VFL analogy. If it's not during the AFL period, no, let's not do that. We'll piss off a lot of people. But we've never played each other. So to have these two modern powerhouses together to finally play each other in the grand final, it is brilliant. It's such a special moment. I'm really looking forward to this. Just I think the AFL, it's good for the AFL, I think, just to showcase what clubs can do in we've done it two different ways, and now we're at the same dance together.
And listen, they can't complain too much because at least there's one Victorian team in the mix. I'm sure they would have rathered the Collingwood Geelong final, because then they could have really squeezed every last dollar out and shut out all the members. Well, maybe not the members.
80% of them would have been Collingwood members somehow, but yeah.
Yeah, look, Buddy versus Selwood, that's an interesting one.
Yep.
Battle of the iconic champions. So what was it, 14 years after their first grand final encounter?
Buddy got the chocolates, I think.
That's right. Hawthorn got over Geelong that day. So what's the record? So we're quoting useless AFL stats here that we saw on some of the socials. 14 years ago, Joel Selwood and Geelong and Lance Franklin with Hawthorn ran onto the MCG for the grand final as the second youngest and seventh youngest players on the ground. This Saturday will be the two oldest players on the ground and set a new VAFL record for longest time between a grand final rematch between two individuals. That's pretty cool.
That's brilliant.
Yep. All right, mate. Well, so all right, what are our strengths and weaknesses? I mean, we sort of did this format for the prelim, this sort of extended preview, and we touched on our own strengths and weaknesses, but we may as well do it again here. So, what do we need to? How do we need to play? I guess to match the strengths and weaknesses of Geelong.
Well, we know what our play style is. It's like high pressure around the ground, tackle pressure, trying to force them to make decisions quickly, get the ball moving fast, get them to drop the ball, errant handballs. And I think what we saw, the good news is that we saw a similar play style against them very recently with Geelong and the Magpies playing them in the qualifying final, where the Pies got off to a good start and eventually lost the game by a small amount, by 6 points, I think, or so. So we have a genuine look at how that game was put together, and that we can apply the same kind of pressure, if not better, being that we're better at doing that particular pressure. And I think we actually have a better structure once we get our hands on the ball. We don't have one speed. We've got multiple speeds. We've got multiple ways that we can kind of use it. So I think we know what our game plan is, and I think it actually falls into a good space in that we do know it can be effective against the Cats, despite the Cats having all this talent around the ground and being really well coached. I think we do have a chance to tell on that. Yeah.
I think, going back to your point about their forward dominance, their top three goal kickers, Hawkins, Cameron and Stangl, 64, 63, 49. That's a total of 176 goals. We don't even match that with our top four. Buddy, 52, Heaney, 48, Hayward, 33, Papley, 31. But when you go on to the next contributors, they've got Brad Close on 24, Gaz Rowan on 14, Myers, 13, Max Holmes, who's touch and go, 13, Smith, 12, Guthrie, 11, and then we've got, I think, more contributors. So we've got Chad, 18, Errol, 18, Sammy Reid, who's 50-50, 18, Logan, 15, Parker, 14, and McLean, who's potentially in the mix, 10. So I think coupled with your points about, our pressure game, our, ability to, win the ball, but also use the ball well, kick well, we've got to maintain that avenues to goal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's off the back of pressure, I think, because, we just pressure teams, we force the turnover, we get an intercept, and, depending on where the ball's coming from in the field, we've found ways to score. And obviously I think we just need to keep that up.
Yeah, they have over 50% of their goals are scored by those three main players. Those
there
Australians.
You go. Yep.
So, but we take four of those players to get to the same number, with Papley being the one that kind of rolls on in. And on top of all of this, I think earlier in the year it was even worse than that. I think it was close to 60-something% of their goals scored by the three. So this has only been a stat that they've kind of turned in the last, I'd say 8 weeks or so. I think the last time I had a look at it, maybe 9 weeks. So it's something important, I think, to factor in. If you can shut one of those two players down, or preferably two of them, then you've got a good chance, I think. You've got a good chance of at least stifling how they can score. I mean, don't get me wrong. You got guys like Dangerfield who can pop up and score wherever he is.
He looked
But
good against the Lions, man.
he looked like his prime at the right time.
Mm.
But and Stengel's a really hard matchup. You know, Myers is a hard matchup, close to hard matchup. Any of those small forwards are tough for the Swans. I think we don't quite have those guys to run with them necessarily as often, but we do have a good strong chance of being able to just shut some of them down. So I think our strength is the McCartan brothers. Tom probably sits on Cameron. Paddy probably sits on Hawkins. Just being that Hawkins doesn't, the leads are a bit shorter for the most part. And maybe we've got a chance. Maybe we've got a chance to run with them.
Yeah, look, I think who was it? I think it was when we played Carlton. That was the day that was probably the only real toweling that Tommy McCartan got this year when Harry McKay got away. No, or was it Curnow? I think it was Curnow. Yeah, Curnow kicked multiple goals. But other than that, like Tommy McCartan is always thereabouts. You know, if he does get beaten, he makes up for it the next time. You know, and if he, he gets a lot of support from the likes of Paddy, Rampy, and even Blakey comes over with the spoil. So, I think I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that we've got what it takes to shut these guys down. Cameron is, I think he's kind of a bit of an X factor there. Obviously, Stengel is like by definition the X factor because he can kick it from anywhere, and he's just got freakish abilities. But
Hawkins gets around the ground a fair bit. Sorry, not Hawkins. So Cameron gets around the ground a fair bit, doesn't he?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think he's the one we've really got to look at, and maybe someone like Foxy rolls onto him because he's got that aerobic ability. But I'm just going to go back to my point earlier about their core being that sort of experience heavy, and they've got 163 games on average. They've got about 28 years on average across their 22, 23, whereas I think and this is sort of my point here is that, our strengths, and this is more about coaching and list management, I think we actually have a good balance in our squad at the moment. So we've got, 117, 118 games on average, about 25. But if you look at our age brackets, we've got 7 players in that 28 plus. We got Fox, Franklin, Hickey, Lloyd, Parker, Rampy, Reed. Again, Reed 50-50, we're waiting. In that middle bracket, 23, 27, we've got 7. And this is really, the new core. Clark, Florent, the established young core, let's call them. Clark, Florent, Hayward, Heaney, Paddy McCartan, Mills, Papley, and potentially Amadi or McLean. And then in that 22 and under, Blakey, Campbell, Goulden, Tommy, McCartan, McDonald, McInerney, Rowbottom, Stevens, Warner. So we've actually got the most in our youngest bracket, but that we also have a lot of X factor and a lot of reasons why we've done so well this year in that bracket as well. So
that's a good point there, Noddy, because I think a big part of that is also is that our ability to finish a game in fitness and the ability for these young players to just keep running all day long into the fourth quarter, deep into the fourth quarter, is perhaps a big part of our game as well against the Cats. I think we can outrun them, we can outdo them. They looked a bit gassed in the fourth quarter. Maybe that was the week off, but no, the Cats also had a week off. So we've got one game in amongst us both. And perhaps we can have these young kids kind of outrun them in that fourth quarter and do what we've done all year, which is, win that fourth quarter, win the third and fourth quarter just from effort, basically, just genuine effort.
So, okay, let's have a quick chat about the teams. And we've already touched on a few matchups in the forward line. But so if we, the Geelong forward line, sorry, who does Clark go on? Like, who's their ball user out of defence? This is something we were chatting about before we started recording, but who will Clark go on? Yeah, because they don't seem to have that one player that's dangerous. They're sort of all dangerous, aren't they?
Yeah,
in their own way.
In their own way, they all can move the ball really well, and they're all kind of athletic and they're all kind of big size. To be fair, maybe except Guthrie, but. Which is not so much of a factor, to be fair. But it's a tough one. It's kind of, do you sit him on someone there? Or I thought of Isaac Smith personally because he's a good ball user. He runs all day. It's a big part of his game. He runs from the back all the way forward. And just like few people can run with him, basically, if anyone.
I
So
wonder
maybe it's
if
worthwhile kind of keeping a track of him.
yeah, I just wonder if he gets stuck on the wing because he's sort of iconically that wing role.
Mm.
If Juzzy's had Langdon, Josh Dacos in the past 3 weeks, I wonder if he gets him or Stevens has a crack with him as well,
Yeah,
or if
Duncan,
or Duncan, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean Zach Tui. I think you may have mentioned there was so it's his 250th game. I think they were saying that Luke Hodge is the only other player to achieve their 250th in the grand final. Of course, we've got our Lloydie's got his 200th coming up next week, so we've got some reasons to potentially celebrate as well. Thank you very much, Geelong. But yeah, look, when you look at their backline, Tui, De Koenig, Buse, Kolajajny, I think I'm saying that right, Jack Henry, Tom Stewart, and Zach Guthrie. So it's a good mix. It's a tall mix. That De Koenig, he's young and he's had an absolute blinder, hasn't he, this year?
Yeah, he's going to probably sit on Buddy.
Yeah,
and he's going to look. He's a pretty big unit for being such a young guy. But yeah, and Tom Stewart, I think is unbelievable. He's probably the best utility player in the game. Can do everything. He can go up and stay on the ground. He can, find his man. He can get involved in a rebound. He's got a bit of everything about him. So he's a really, really tough matchup. And you don't know who you would sit on him because he kind of gets himself free, and that's kind of his big part of his game.
I reckon he's their Dane Rampy. He's that VFL entrant. He's that sort of chilled, kind of somewhat like sort of hipster surfer type vibe. Seems like a pretty cool guy. But came to the pro league late, but has more than made up for it in his ability and the award that he's gotten for that. But yeah, he's going to be a key player, definitely a key player. And we don't want to do those silly entries where we just bomb long, and because he and Sam De Koenig will just pick us off. It'll be like a field day for them. They'll just intercept all day.
The good news is one or two things there. Buddy has learned how to take overhead marks, as we found out last week. Some contested marks.
Only if he gets the mismatch.
That's right. Only if he gets the mismatch. Yeah, maybe it was. Maynard not going up, but also we've had plenty of experience in not just bombing it through. The Demons are the team that we've beaten in the qualifier, and that's a big part of their game. And we I think the first quarter we were falling into that trap, and then we kind of figured it out and worked our way around that and started finding more opportunity to goal from different angles and from out of the centers and stuff. So I think we do have an opportunity to do something with it. We know how not to just bomb it into their favor, because they're big guys and it's a bit of a mismatch for us in that back line there.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so midfields we've sort of touched on. I think that the Cats, pretty similar to my point I made about the Pies last week, was that I think most of the danger will come from their more experienced core, Pendlebury, side bottom, Crisp, and to a lesser extent De Goey, and three out of four I think it was correct with those. De Goey, I think he only had 12 touches, but they're even more pronounced as we've already made points here. Their midfield is so experienced. They've got a Blitzarves who's effectively a ruck, but he's playing as a midfielder, but he can play wing and key defender.
Yep.
Like he's like Mr. Fix-It for them.
Yeah.
Right?
If there's a problem in the field, just send him down that way.
Just send him, and he'll do it.
Yeah. It's kind of similar to a Heaney kind of person for us.
Although he's certainly got that aerobic ability.
Yeah.
He's a massive unit. He can just run all day, can't he?
Yeah.
So he's one we're going to watch. Max Holmes, we're still waiting to hear if he's coming through. Reece Stanley, he's probably their role player, but to their credit, they've backed him in. I think at times that Radigolia was looked at, and Stanley's held his spot, so good on him. Dangerfield, Guthrie, Selwood, Atkins, Duncan. So
Look, Atkins is a beast. He's the one who gets all their tackles. He's going to be the one that's going to be probably sitting on a Warner or I don't know, Parks. Probably not Parks. Parks can shed him, but yeah, whoever's going to be more dangerous out of the center, so you Papley or Warner, you're going to have Atkins running on him. So just prepare for that. That's what he does. He does a good job of it. He sat on Neil, just absolutely shut Neil down. Neil's a bull, man. Neil's an absolute beast, but Atkins had his number, so you can do that. So that'd be a good one. That'd be a good one to see. What do we say about Selwood, mate? Like,
well, so I mean, yeah, he's got a lot of personal accolades and stats, but he's probably like that Papley type player where, everyone kind of hates him, but you'd love if he's on your team. Like he will become he will jump into number one for most finals played next week. So another little accolade for them. So he'll overtake Michael Tuck, the Hawthorn champion, on the currently equal first with 39 appearances, and it will be his 40th finals appearance. Yeah. And of course, we made mention of the 2007, final with Buddy and him. Was it 7 or 8?
7.
Check 7. Yeah. So, yeah, he is. I like to think he's the original Ginnivan rule. He is the one who really invented how to lift an arm and duck into a tackle.
How it's not called the Selwood tackle or the Selwood move when you lift your shoulder and to cop a hit in the head and then go get taped and don't do a concussion test, come back out again. I mean, that's not under his name blows my mind. But he's done it. He's been successful at it. Chris needs to move on.
I mean, they call him – good on you, mate. I love it. They call him Mr. Bump, right? So he's he certainly bleeds for the Cats. And, I think they took him on as a risk early on. He had a knee injury, ACL in his draft year, but he's more than paid them back, obviously. So danger player. He's like Selwood. He's like Pendlebury for them, he's just he's rocking on. So
he doesn't move as much these days, but neither does Pendles, right?
Yeah.
But they found a way. Yeah, they found a way to impact. I mean, we were all hoping that we'd see something similar out of Joey, but Joey's just such an inside ball, and that's all he knows. And unfortunately, the hammies are kind of taking his toll on him. But
that's a story. That's a shame. I think we're all sort of holding out that maybe he could hang around for Medi sub for the grand final. Wouldn't that be a storyline?
And then it was only last week, I think. Yeah, we heard that he'd done it again because he was from all accounts he was pushing himself to the limit to try to get on to have a chance at the grand final, and unfortunately pulled the other one again.
Devastating. But he's the ultimate club man, and he's going to be there for everyone and cheering everyone on probably from the bench or very close to it. So, we've got that, strength of knowledge. But Brad Close, I just want to flag, he kicked 4, I think, in the game against us last time. And we might be talking about that in a moment, but he can get off the chain. So they've got these small forwards, him, Stengel, as we've already touched on, Myers with his unique kicking action. Our small backs that we know, we've got Lloydie, Florent and Fox. Even Rampy could run on. But these guys we really need to be careful of, especially Stengel, because of their ability to score and to hurt. So
we've said all of this, and we've managed to not talk about Patrick Dangerfield too much.
Or Gary Rowan, the ex-Swan.
Oh, the ex-Swan guy. Dangerfield is a freak, and they've managed him this year. If you know, he's not played for pockets of a time, and basically they've been very upfront about it. We're managing him. We want to make sure that he's okay, and he doesn't get the time on the ground, but it's all about managing his body for the right time. And considering what we saw last week against the Lions, he's a scary unit. The big boy, and he's fucking quick. So I don't know what we're going to do with that. He's a very, very hard person to match up with. Putting a body on him was one thing that you can do with Neil, but then you got to run with him, and not many people can. Very few can.
Yeah, because he's got that dangerous mix of size and speed still, even for his age. And I'm. This is a challenge to Chad Warner. I want him to out Dangerfield. I want him to be the one bursting out of the centre square and kicking goals from the 50-metre arc. But yeah, I mean, how do you stop a Dangerfield that's on fire? I guess it's just a mix of Mills, Rowie, and Parker, kind of like what we did against the Pies.
Yeah, it's probably putting people in the way, traffic.
Yeah.
It's the only way to slow him down. So yeah, Rowie, Mills kind of playing like a bit of a sweeper. That's the only way to make him look sideways, basically. And then there's no other way. Once he gets rolling, if you're half a foot behind him, that he's off. Like this, he's having a shot at goal. So that's all about getting traffic in front of him.
One thing I've noticed about Danger is that he tends to play up the niggles he has. I don't know if he'll do it in the grand final, but there's always a lot of attention when something happens to his body, and I think it's just because he's so hard at the contest that he's always putting himself in that that path of danger. Sorry, Dangerfield. There we go. I think that was my first dad joke, and that's pretty good for me.
That's right. We didn't even have one last episode.
That's right. So I did a whole episode without a dad joke. Crazy.
Let's go back and do it again.
Let's do it. Re-record.
It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. Let's go.
Oh, goodness. But yeah, so I wonder, if there's that element, like if he picks up a niggle, is he going to, is the Danger show going to roll on? Like, woe is me. It's all about me. It can be like that.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful
body's
player.
A temple.
Body's a temple. Is that kind of vibe, So I'm not saying we go out there and just, injure him to get him out of the game. But if he picks up something like that organically through gameplay, how much of that is going to, detract from his, potential to impact? And obviously, as a Swan, a Swans fan, I know which scenario I'd prefer. Yeah, but Cameron Guthrie, I think, is their highest disposal getter. I think he's had like 500 or 600. Like he's up there in the top 10 or so for disposals. So the guy's a bit of a ball magnet, and he can use it very, very well off both feet.
Super talented guy, unbelievably talented guy, and he gets his run. He runs a lot. He gets to contests. He gets opportunity at the ball. Like he's kind of like, I'd imagine. I kind of put him with Millsy kind of line where he's always available wherever you need him. He's always available to get his hands on the ball and kind of get it moving again. So he just
always reminds me of Tim Minchin, that comedian musician.
Dead ringer for him
with his that blonde. He's got dreadies, right?
Is it dreadies or is it just genuine not washed?
Cameron Guthrie, wash your hair, mate. All right. No, you're right, mate. No, yeah. So that's the midfield. We've spoken about the forwards. We've spoken about the backs. Our forwards.
I mean, who do you see? Okay, so I guess, do we want to talk about the Sam Reid situation?
Yeah, okay, let's do that here. Yeah,
go for it.
Well, so as we mentioned, he's 50-50. Word is they're going to leave it right up until game day to make the call. Those in line for potentially, if we're replacing him like for the role that he provides, those that have been in discussion for potential replacement are Hayden McLean, Joel Amati, and even Cal Sinclair has been in the mix. So if we choose to, and of course we can't consider the big bad lad because he's still serving his punishment from that brain fade against Woden in the game against the Casey Demons, and I'm a little bit bummed that the club didn't sort of go to bat for him and maybe try and get him down from 3-2 or 3-1, because he would have been a pretty handy.
Yeah, like you know what it is these days with the AFL. You ask the question, they just bend over straight away. So like, I don't understand why we didn't, but yeah, maybe we didn't think we were going to get this far in. I don't know.
Yeah, or they actually genuinely wanted to teach him a bit of a lesson and say, they probably weren't predicting that we'd go this far because it was still a couple of, it was 4 or so 5 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago. But yeah, it's certainly there might have been an element of, well, mate, you made your bed, lie in it, but you can't help but feel he would be a pretty handy, potential sub at this point.
Yeah, would he have been the walk-in for Sam Reid in that case, in your mind?
I think so, given the fact that he can. Well, he's clearly capable in the ruck, and he can play forward. But has he been doing that better than the likes of McLean and Amati and even Sinclair in the Rezzies? Probably not, because he hasn't really been. I think he's been in the ruck, right? He's been in the ruck. He hasn't been playing too much.
Yeah,
forward.
there's a couple of games where he's kicked a few,
Yeah,
and he's got disposals and stuff. But in terms of consistency, you'd probably say that in terms of forward class anyway, Marty's kind of had that wrapped up. He's probably he's been like one of the best in the VFL, and has kicked the most amount of goals of the Swans there, of those big men. So yeah,
in the AFL, he's kicked 5 with his limited opportunities. This is Party. But yeah, I think he's one of the leading goal kickers for us in the VFL. I know I was tracking his stats when he was coming in and out of the AFL team, and he'd kicked whatever it was, 14 over 3 weeks or something. Like, he was getting bags consistently there for a while. And when he was kicking a lot, Hayden McLean wasn't. But then when Party wasn't, Hayden was. So, I think it might have been one. It's like that kind of buddy Logan type dynamic, where one becomes the target and the other has a bit of a field day. So I tend to think, if we're going to go out on a limb on the podcast now and say, who is it, and obviously we want Reedy to recover, we want him there because he's definitely the number one choice. But if he's any doubt, then I would suggest not playing him and then putting in probably. My hunch is McLean, given the fact that he's been in the emergencies more recently.
Yeah.
Even though Amati was was in the AFL side more recently than McLean.
I agree with you. I think from a structure perspective and what he brings to the game, what do we miss with Reedy? We miss a proper contested marks, contests, getting hands onto the ball, dropping it in front of the forwards.
Great tackle effort as well. Like, how good's his defense been this year?
Yeah,
when he's played sole ruck. Like, remember that game? He got like 10 tackles,
15, 3 goals,
15 contested possessions.
I guess the Demons. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think McLean makes a bit more sense in that sense, just because of what he does in the air is a bit better. But one thing we did notice about McLean, and this was early on, this is when he was kind of a regular in, was that he sometimes went into a contest when a contest didn't need to be made. So if you had, Logan and Reedy going up, then McLean came in as the third, and just like that's actually not what you need to do. You need to time it a bit better, and that's where guys like Haywood and Reedy are so clever. They'll pick their time and only get involved and know they can impact, and just do things like that. So that's the only reason I'm a little bit soft on him. But
that's experience. I reckon that's experience though, because this is
for sure.
This is the point that some Swans fans have made, is that do you throw a curveball and bring Cal Sinclair in, because he's got the experience. He has been toiling away in the VFL. He's been he didn't make the VFL team of the year like Amati, Gould and Taylor did, but he's been the consummate clubman again. He's announced his retirement, but is this sort of like that sort of final farewell where he comes up and plays a role? Because he might have the requisite experience to know when to attack a pack and when not. Whereas the younger McLean and Amati might just go at everything, and that might work sometimes, but as you're saying, it might not work every time. So
yeah, it's true. Amati throws his body into it. Like, we've seen it. Like, he throws himself at it. It looks great. He just destroys a pack, but he's not getting his hands on it as much as we'd probably want that someone like a Reedy can do. And I think McLean has that a bit more of him. But yeah, Sinclair kind of does a bit of both. You're right. Maybe I'm just a bit concerned that his Mad Monday might have been a little bit too mad. Like, how's his fitness? 2 weeks into retirement, 2 weeks is not a long time, but it is a long time in terms of pure AFL level fitness. It's a long time for sure.
He's been in the emergencies as well recently. At least certainly for the last 2 games. And so I don't know if that means that they were preparing for either Hickey and or Reed to have 2 tools, because it's been Sinclair, McLean, Gould, and Campbell. And obviously the Medi sub for the past 2, the final series, has been Campbell both times. But it certainly looks like they'd been planning for it. But I'm not suggesting that Cal is the choice or is my choice. And in fact, for what it's worth, I genuinely think Amati is the better ruck option. McLean has definitely played ruck before, not this year. I think it was last year and the year before. They've thrown him in certainly at times, and I've thought, I think it was the year when Naismith went down for his second ACL and Cal Sinclair was the key ruck. And then I think McLean was chopping out. And at that time, I thought McLean was a better ruck than Cal Sinclair. So some Swans fans are saying that, Amadi's a better ruck. But yeah, as you're saying, Hayden McLean's a better probably contested mark and a more confident goal kicker. But I will say in McLean's defense, he is a very good runner. And Steve-O made this point last year on the podcast. When you look at his GPS numbers, he's running as much as a midfielder. He's doing 14, 15 kilometers. He's busting his ass up and down the wing. He's sort of, I guess he was playing like that Logan McDonald role, that third tall, but sort of helping out with the pressure to create a turnover. So I'm not really worried about his fitness or his speed. Like I've seen some fans comment on some of the groups, but we're having a long conversation for a hypothetical here, but it's very important. It's going to, because, as we've already noted, Geelong's a tall team. They've got some really dangerous tall players.
And Reedy is such an important matchup for us.
Exactly.
In that line on both sides of the register, and the back line and the forwards. And we saw what happened to our structure when he left against the Pies.
Yeah.
We saw I wouldn't say a total collapse of what was happening, but we definitely saw a massive hole show itself, and we barely held on to put that together. So it's such an important role. Reedy, if not Reedy, the first two names that came out of the mix immediately were Amadi and McLean. From what I've seen around, most people kind of edging towards Amadi. And so, like I'm saying, like a 55 to 45% going for Amadi. But yeah, throwing Cal Sinclair in there, Noddy, that's not a bad one. That is not a bad little.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was someone on the groups, and to be honest, I hadn't considered it. But it's probably the closest like for like if you think about what you're saying. Reedy brings to us in terms of not just the role, but the experience as well. Because that's the other thing. If we lose a player like him, then our average age gets younger. So. And that's the kind of thing that is not the only thing to think about, but it sort of is in the mix for your thoughts of how you structure up for a grand final. But
what about letting someone like Hayward just get loose? And because he's great in the air, good contested marker, very clever, knows the times it really well. Are you
saying put him in as the ruck, a second ruck, or?
Well, kind of maybe not so much that, but put him in as the swing man to kind of go around, to kind of let him get a bit loose. And
so
then
who do you bring in for?
You have like someone like an Amadi who's we know kicks goals, to just sit forward more and then play at a double ruck option when you need it.
Okay, so Amadi is your replacement, but you're making a structural change on the field.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, look, I quite like Amadi. I think he's look, it's going to be interesting. I honestly don't know. Obviously, I think we've made it very clear our first preference is that Reedy recovers and he plays. But my position also is if there's any doubt, like if he's not 100%, then I probably wouldn't play him. But I'm not the coach, and you don't have to look at him in the face and tell him that. So, which is gutting, obviously. But anyway, it's going to be interesting, one to watch. I reckon we should. Yeah, I know. I reckon we should roll on to head-to-head, mate. So let's have a look at our past 5 games. So heading back to our furthest away, 2019, Geelong beat us by 22 at their home. 2019, further in the season, we beat them by 27 SCG. 2020, they beat us by 6 up in the Gold Coast. 2021, we beat them by 2 at the SCG. And then 2022, we beat them by 30 in Buddy's game. So that is 3 to Geelong and 2 to us. If you're the types that like following the past 5. And I think what we're also going to say here is we're going to look at the last game, so that we just touched on, and we've spoken about it a little bit throughout. But yeah, I think my point earlier was it's a little bit hard to get a read on them that night, but just because it was such an emotionally charged and just a crazy night that night.
It was, and it was a very different team that was playing from both sides. The structure was very different, and the game plan was kind of different. And yeah, as you mentioned, the emotions were running high, and the crowd was in it. And every time that Buddy went in a lead, the crowd went nuts. So yeah, it's a hard one to put together. I mean, Heaney kicked 5 goals. He got loose, and I think that's when we started really seeing Heaney's going to do some special stuff. And Buddy got the 4 goals. Millsy with 29 touches. So I guess the players that needed to play were playing on that day. But I don't really know what else to take away from it. I mean, looking at the Geelong side, Guthrie with 8 tackles, Selwood with 25 disposals, Isaac Smith with 23 disposals, and Dangerfield with 6 clearances, Selwood 5 clearances. All of these numbers and what I'm suggesting here is not unusual for any part of the game, any game that they would play throughout the year. So I guess their players were playing their particular roles, doing it well, doing what they need to do. Brad Close was an interesting one. 4 goals, which was massive for him, and 10 scoring involvements for the night. So he kind of got a bit loose there. Maybe we had the other 2s pinned down, and so he was the last one to kind of get going, and didn't have enough focus on him. But yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it, Noddy? So what do we take away from all of this?
Yeah, look, I don't know, mate. It's hard because, and the other thing is when we look at when we've played them and where we've played them, because we're both, effectively regional teams, obviously with long histories, but Geelong being based in the country, in comparison to Metro Vic, and us being, one of the northern clubs, we're either playing at their home ground or our home ground. And of course, their home ground has been consistent. It's had a lot of different names. I like to call it Cardinia because it's in their song, but it's got a fancy acronym at the moment. And ours is the SCG and should have always been. But of course, there was that little bit of a, run at Homebush there for a while. But basically, since 1980, we've only played the Cats at the MCG twice. And for that reason I just mentioned, it's because, when we play away, we play at their home. When they play away, they play at our home. But those 2 games have been recent. They've, relatively recent. So 2016 was the prelim final, which we won by 37. And then we went on, obviously, to quote unquote be defeated, quote unquote, by the Bulldog, by the quote unquote fair,
the saltiest response.
Salty, yeah. And then following year, 2017 semi-final, Geelong, did a number on us and beat us by 59. So in a very long time, even in modern times, we've only played at that ground twice against each other, and they've been in the finals, high stakes. So bit of a hard to get a read on that one. The other thing we've touched on throughout is obviously the success of Geelong and Sydney over the time. And I said earlier, so obviously they had a little bit of a success in the mid 2000s, 2007, 9, and 11. They won the flags. They lost in 2008, and then they lost in 2020. Conversely, as we all know, on the Swans side, it's 12, 14, 16, and then we won 12 and lost 14, 16. Not including this year, obviously, that we're looking at. When we look at the coaches, and this really is interesting because they both started in 2011, and the major difference is that Chris Scott started his tenure with a flag in 2011, so sort of riding the coattails of the forefathers. But with the Roos transition, Horse picked up in 2011 as well, took us to a semi-final that year, but won the flag the next year in 2012. And so they've both been coaching for 12 years respectively. And on Geelong's side, they've only ever not been in finals once in that time, 2015. When they finished 10th. And then, as we know, as has been well documented, we had our mini rebuild in the years 2019 and 2020, where we finished 15th and 16th, respectively. Other than that, we've been totally competitive and have been in finals. So when we look at the, you get in the mindset, you think, okay, all right, who's got more experience, who's more successful, who's got the edge when it comes to game day. We look at the coaches and the careers, the games coached, the win-loss rate, all that stuff, the regular season and the finals. I don't know what to draw out here. I think we can probably look at what's the best thing to look here. The finals. Should we just look at the finals record?
Yeah, let's stick to finals. I think that's when you really show what a team can do.
Well, okay, so Chris Scott has coached 27 finals with 12 wins, 15 losses, with a win rate of 44.4%. On the other side, on the good side, on the red and white side, Horse has coached 23 finals with 12 wins, 11 losses at 52.2%.
Boom.
And boom, we'll take it.
Boom, done.
The other thing I think is works in our favor, obviously not at the time, but sitting where we're sitting now, I think having lost twice, I think you learn a lot from that. And no doubt he's been biding his time 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, thinking, he's just focusing on the rebuild. But if we ever get back to the grand final, this is what we're doing. Obviously that's subject to the personnel you have at the time, but I like to think that Horse has been planning this since 2016.
Yeah.
And that's
in his back room.
Yeah, that's a flippant comment because it's almost obvious, but you don't know when you're gonna get there until you're sort of through 3/4 of the way through the season, and even then you're sort of taking it a week at a time, as I like to say. But
but it was just as you start to wind up, as you know who the most competitive teams are, like that Don Pike and Horse have been sitting in the back room, having a look at what the Cats doing to make sure that it's a copycat league. Whatever they were doing, is that going to be replicated? Can we beat it? What would we do if we beat it? Scenario testing, and it's just been the pure focus of them for every minute of the day for this last week or last few days anyway. Probably a little bit before that potentially. So yeah, it's a good point you've raised. Like ultimately, by those losses, do we gain more out of them? Do we gain not more out of them, but do we gain something out of them? Do we gain some sleepless nights that ultimately turned into some brilliance on the coaching front?
Yeah, look, I think we've got to tell ourselves that it does, because it does. But it's going to be hard. Like I think all Swans fans. I think the AFL has. I mean, the deputy mayor of Geelong has already planned the victory parade. You hear that one?
Well, I don't blame him because they got to be a few days after. And so they probably have to get permits and stuff going up and running. So I'm not going to get too up in arms about it.
You're the mayor. Just pull a Swiftie. Like
he's the Geelong mayor. He pulls Swiftie every day of his life. He's just another one. It's fine.
Shoring up those dairy contracts.
Yeah, that's it. Up and around dairy farms. Look, there's a few ways that we can beat them. I think. Look, they're first in goal assists per game. That's massive for them. They share. They get a lot of players to kind of get into it. They score a lot, but the Swans are also the second at stopping that. So we do have the ability to really shut some of that stuff down. Within the same vein, the Cats are first in inside 50s. The Swans are fourth in stopping that as well. So we are good at slowing it down going into their 50. Their forwards are the most dangerous guys going around, and we can do something with that. The other part about what they do is that we are minus in a head-to-head. We are minus 27 per game in handballs. So they use the handball way more. They get moving really, really well. So they're fifth highest in handballs, but we are second for the least handballs for the opponent. So they are 5 in the highest for handballs. They are minus 27 on us, and we are second in the least for letting our opponents handball on us. So we do have a good structure, and the pressure acts that we do have are able to slow their movement of their ball down and are able to slow the inside 50s and sharing it around inside their 50s. We do have the ability to do this. So I'm actually walking into this with my head pretty high in that we are going to be competitive. I'm really confident about that. And I think if we can be coached well, as you're saying, then maybe we've got a strong chance here.
Well, we spoke about last week. We have the ability to adapt within games, and we haven't really had that. For the whole of horses time, we've often had a couple of plans, and that's sort of been it. And then if we've needed to shift again, we haven't been able to. But this year we've seen a lot of different tactics and strategies and ability to move within the game. And you think if they're beating us at the handballs, kind of like what the Pies did in the second half of last week, but also with that Freo game getting away from us, just shifting and getting a more sort of racking up the ball, stealing it away from them, building up the uncontested possessions. But they can also do that as well. That's sort of a hallmark of Chris Scott as well. Starve the opposition of possession. Take the heat out of the game. So I just think if we can, I just think it's pressure and run. If we can bring the pressure, the youthful enthusiasm, and run and run and run, I think we could run them off their feet potentially.
Yep. Limit their time with the ball to make any sweet decisions with it. I think we've got the opportunity. Yeah.
Pressure, turnover, and just have a crack. And then I think it's opportunity. I know this is stupid. It's the same for every game, but we really have to take our opportunities this time.
Got to kick straight.
We got to kick straight. Like we can't spray. We've just really got to get it through the big ones. I know it's commonsensical, and I know the players are aware of that, but it's the biggest stage. It's the big dance. So
last roll of the dice for some. Like, you don't know when you're going to get back there, right? I have no idea when you're going to get back to a grand final. I mean, we have high hopes, and we're really confident about our team and what we're doing with it. And our rebuild, I feel, was built on fantastic foundations. But you don't know when you're going to come back to this. You take it for granted what Richmond had done. Like, look at the D's. D's thought they were in the middle of this great dynasty, and then straight sets, out they go. So you don't know. It's so stressful. It's so stressful. But so we have a chance.
Oh, we got more than a chance. I think that we're thick in it, mate. And I'm certainly not confident, but I think that if we bring it, I think that we'll go a very long way to getting the job done.
Yep.
But it's going to be very difficult against this team that seems to be humming. But yeah, it still doesn't make living through the week any easier, does it?
Well, I think that's a bit of a message for all Swans fans and Cats fans out there as well. Like, you got to enjoy it. We have to enjoy the time, right? Like, we don't have any time to enjoy the prelim because we're too busy focused on the grand final, but we need to try to enjoy this. I know how stressed we all are. I'm not sleeping. I lost sleep last night because one of the bevy, Jules, wasn't sure whether she was coming or not, and I lost sleep over that. I don't know why, but I did. But there's no need for that. We just need to sit back and enjoy it, make the most of it. Yeah, we just make the most of it.
The other thing is, and I see here that James Noble, and I think this is James who sits behind us in the home and away season.
It is, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out to James and his fam. And this is a very good point, and I'll just read it out. So James says, dreams, that 2012 all over again keeps going. We've finished third on the ladder. We've beaten Collingwood in a prelim, and we go into the grand final as underdogs, but we win. An 81-91 scoreline would be incredible. Yeah, I love his vibes there, and his point there. I think underdogs. So again, we're the outsiders. Geelong it's theirs to win, it's ours to lose. And if anything this year, if our performance this year has shown us anything, it's that we tend to do better against teams that are above us, whether that's actually in the ladder or just almost perceived.
Perceived
and
quality
so
or whatnot.
perceived
Yeah.
quality, like if the Cats are meant to win because they're so much better than us, then we're the underdogs. And I think I'd rather be in that position because I think we've played better footy when we've been faced by that dynamic. So I think James has picked it there. So well done, mate.
We
You
are
got
underdogs.
any other shout outs there, mate?
Yeah, look, there's a bunch of them. Look, Zane Red and White, our man.
Amen.
Combined free kick count for 2012 and 2016 is 18 to 41. So it's 18 for Sydney, 41 against. Definitely redemption time for Stivic and Meredith. Let's see whether he's right there. Liam Mack on Twitter messaged to say, gutted that I won't make it back from Scotland to go to the grand final. I spent an amazing 3 months cheering at the SCG and also following interstate. I've made lifelong memories and I hope to make more in the future. 1 year I'll make a GF, which is awesome. Good on you, Liam. Tasmanian Tony, my man down there in Tasmania. How you doing, Tony? He's written, do I have to get arrested this weekend? Question mark. I watched the 2005 and 2012 premierships in a house in Hobart that I sold 6 years ago. Do I have to break into that house for us to win again? Quite a few people suggest he does. So, Tony, that's on you, mate. Let us know how that goes. Bail is set for 1,000 a night or whatever. Gary Murray has given us just a prediction. 12-12, 84 for Geelong. Sydney, 15-10, a Hungy. So, let's see where that ends up. Justin Morgan has messaged us to say Bud will announce his 1 year deal during the Queen's funeral, going out on the limb. Well, mate, you weren't far off it because, he announced and, he's got it done. So he said something. Phil Geddes reckons that Logan is going to break open a close game in the third by kicking 2 goals in 5 or 10 minutes. So Logan's going to break it open, apparently. Good on you, Phil. Nat 28 message to say it's her first grand final, missed out on previous ballots. All she wants to see is a solid 4-quarter effort that makes everyone proud and showcases the talent and culture of the club. Win or lose, I'll be happy to have been along for the ride. That's the attitude, I guess. Jonty, I fucking hate this guy. Jonty just wrote extra time. My heart will just give out, mate. So I don't know how I feel about that, but thanks for coming on through. And
thanks, but no thanks, mate.
Thanks there, Jonty. Justin Morgan also wrote, "Fuck umpires, just bend us over now." All right, calm down.
That's negative. That's
pretty negative. Yeah.
Let's say I think Phil Geddes also mentioned that, and this has been across the socials, but the Temper Trap, are playing, and they played during the 2012 flag
that's right.
grand final. So that's
grand final. Yeah,
that's cool.
And also that's all amongst the coming third, right? And also with the Dosa Roosters in Tasmania winning, losing their premiership. So the stars are aligning. The stars are aligning.
Yeah. All right, mate. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this. Well, I mean, other than the fact that we could always do the whole who you're tipping thing, but I think we've sort of touched on it. I'm, as always, not willing to commit because I'm just so fraught with emotion, and this is quite literally the highest stakes of the year. So, have you got one last thing, mate?
I just want to say that the energy that we had at the SCG was incredible.
Yeah.
And it was the best I've ever felt at the SCG. The crowd was in it from the very beginning, and we rode all the highs and the lows as the game went on. And there was loads of positivity throughout the ground as it was happening. And I would just love to see that happen again. I know we're going to have a smallish contingent of Swans fans because the AFL sold off all of these rights to them businesses, right? So we're not going to have as many. We're arguably not going to have as many club members at the game as we want. So those who go, please scream loud, go off every decision, every contest. Let them know how you feel. Let's not hold back. Let's show them that the Swans are a force on the field and also in the crowd.
Let's hope we have a strong contingent of South the South Melbourne brother and sisterhood down there, sitting in the MCC or AFL members or AFL entitlement / contractual obligation sections, because there's a chunk of seats there that could otherwise be Swans and or Cats fans, Cats members, as that Tony Jones bloke gave a rather impassioned speech about the the unfairness of the allocation system. But as we're saying, if we can bring the same intensity as we did last week to the MCG this week, then that'll help our boys hopefully get over the line.
That's it. That's all we need. And look, there's a big week ahead of us, mate. We've got the grand final parade. You've got the AFLW. You've got the big walk to the MCG on the day. There's a lot still to happen.
Grand final parade. Yeah, we've got the drive down with those 3 boys under 2. That's going to
Alan Joyce cancelled my flight, and I still don't know when I'm flying. I haven't got a message to say it's been replaced. So I don't know if I'm going at this point. So I may need a lift. But we'll just see what happens.
Let me know, mate, because we might be running out of seats. But all right, no worries, mate. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. So on behalf of the bevy, I'd like to say thank you to all you Cygnets and Swanlings out there for listening in. Make sure to keep following us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at A Bevy of Bloods for various content, updates, and announcements. Until then, up the bloods.
Up the bloods.
And can't you, Swannies?